afternoon and welcome to the Western EIM Governing Body meeting. Please note that all audio connections are muted until the Q&A and comment portion of the call. At that time, you may enter the question or comment queue by using the WebEx raise hand icon or dialing #2 on your phone. For optimum viewing of live video, we recommend you go to the layout icon located at the top of your screen in WebEx, select Stack View, and hide participants with video off from the list of options. If you require any technical assistance, please send a chat to the event producer or host. With that, I'll turn the conference over to Roger Collington. Please go ahead.
Roger, you're muted.
Okay, so we'll try that again. So this is Anita Decker. Welcome everybody to the October 20th Energy Imbalance Market meeting, and I am going to turn it over to Roger for the roll call. Roger?
Well, should we do the roll call ourselves? For instance, Dalfong here.
I will do it. So, Vice Chair Kanzioka?
Here.
Val Fong?
Here.
John Prescott?
I'm here.
Jennifer Gardner? Jennifer, you're muted.
I'm here.
Thank you. Okay, for the agenda today, to get started, is there any public comment not related to our agenda today? So if you'll give a minute for anyone that would like to make a comment on today's meeting.
You may enter the comment queue by using the WebEx raise hand icon or dialing #2 on your phone. You will hear a beep tone or notification when you're unmuted. Please state your name and affiliation before stating your comment. There are no comments in the queue.
Okay, again, I want to thank everybody for being here today. We're going to be talking a little bit about the survey that we did on the governing body market expert. We'll also have a report out from our CEO, Elliot Mainzer, and from the Regional Issues Forum and from the Board of State Regulators. So our body of state regulators, I always want to call it a board, so sorry about that. So to kind of get started, we need to approve the minutes from our previous meeting on September 8th. Do I have a motion?
John, I'll make a motion to approve.
I've been outdoors.
Sounds like Roger is on. Roger, I'll let you have that.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm sorry if I had some technical difficulties before. Yes, we need a motion to approve the September 8th, 2021 general session minutes. And I'm sorry, we had a first on that. Who was that?
John Prescott.
Thank you, John. And second? We have a second on the motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Chair Decker. And let me take your vote, Chair Decker.
Aye.
Vice Chair Kanzioka. Rob, your vote, please. I can kind of read lips. I believe that was an aye, but yeah, we're not hearing you. Let me go to Member Fong. Your vote. I'm not hearing you, Val. Member Gardner, your vote.
Aye.
Okay. I believe I saw an aye from Flip. I can't see Val.
Speak. Aye. This is Val.
Thank you, Val.
This is
Rob, your
Rob.
vote?
I support. I vote yes.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry that minutes was much more effort than it should have been. And back to you, Chair Decker.
Okay. Just for folks that are listening in, we have both Rob and Val are in the same room, and we have Pam Sporberg with them. And so we've got to coordinate the microphones a bit. So apologize if this might be a little bit of clunky, but they've been at the Krebsey-Bosser meeting, and they stayed there and rather than try and dash home so that we could have our meeting this afternoon. So sorry if you have to kind of bear with us a little bit there.
Point of order. This is John. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm not sure you got my vote. Did you call for me and all that confusion? And just for the record.
Oh, I did, and I thought you said aye, or I imagined it, but I'm sorry. So your vote is an aye. Thank you.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay, very good. So the next item on our agenda is the report from our CEO, Elliot Mainzer. So Elliot,
Thank you very much, Chair Decker. I'll do a quick sound check. Can you hear me okay? Hear me fine? Good. All right. Well, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you. I too have had the enjoyable experience here in San Diego for the last couple days for the Krebsey meetings. Just outstanding attendance, wonderful chance to meet quite a few people in person, including governing body members, Consley and Fong. So it's a chance. It's really nice to finally be putting some faces to Zoom experiences, and I just think it was really nice. The Western energy community was really, I think, just really pulsating with a lot of excitement, a lot of energy here these last couple of days, and sort of into this mix, of course, just this last week, we have inserted back into the dialogue the conversation around our extended day-ahead market. I think as many of you now know, this is an issue, an actual initiative that we have effectively put on hold last August after some initial work during 2018, 19, 20. That work earlier had stumbled a little bit in terms of getting to alignment on some of the core principles. There were some disconnects between the California load-serving entities, the big investor owns, and many of the EIM entities. Across the course of this summer, even with everything going on, stress grid conditions, tough issues, we kept the communication channels open, and there was a subset of the EIM entities met on a sort of weekly basis with Southern California Edison and Pacific Gas Electric and San Diego, and Southern California Edison, San Diego, and PG&E, and worked to try to establish greater alignment around the core design principles for an enhanced day-ahead market. And at the end of August, they decided that they had made sufficient progress that it was time to sort of cast the full light of transparency on this conversation and bring that dialogue forward into a full and sort of reinvigorated stakeholder process. And so last Wednesday, the 13th, we hosted what we referred to as our Extended Day-Ahead Market Forum, which is extremely grateful for the level of attendance. We had about 600 people on the line, and just a wonderful set of panels. Started out with just a really engaging conversation between several of the CEOs from the major utilities in California and across the West. We then had a chance to hear directly a nice substantive report out from the technical team that had worked on the design principles across the course of the summer, a chance to sort of report out on the areas of agreement, the areas for additional work. And then we had an excellent roundtable of a group of state regulators and policy experts from across the West on many of the, not only the technical issues, but the additional governance conversation that will be continued as we move forward. And just a general sense of I think, great engagement, and I think some optimism that we have an opportunity now to really build on the outstanding foundation of the energy imbalance market, which, by 2023 will cover about 84% of the load in the Western United States and has already produced over $1.4 billion of benefits. And to really take the time here to position EDAM as the next major step in West-wide market evolution. We come at this from a very straightforward perspective. We really appreciate the partnerships with our EIM entities across the West. We think that the technical foundations that have been established are very strong. The relationships are enduring even through some very, very difficult conversations. And I think we just generally believe, I think our central hypothesis is that the West really will do best when we optimize transmission and resource diversity across the widest geographical footprint possible. So very encouraged. The ISO at that meeting, we laid out our initial thinking on the timing. The goal would be to work between now and the end of 2022 to hammer out the additional design details for the enhanced day-ahead market. 2023 would involve implementation work at both the ISO, of course, but equally importantly at the utilities themselves as they work on their technology and their platforms and their tariffs. And then we would be hoping to have our first set of EDAM entities ready for onboarding in the early part of 2024. It's a very ambitious schedule. A lot of things need to come together. We are going to have our next meeting on November 12th, and we've already been soliciting a lot of input from stakeholders on how we really design the stakeholder process to make it as inclusive and as efficient as we possibly can. We have a lot of work to do on multiple different dimensions, and I think folks are recognize that, but also very encouraged and I think ready to really roll up their sleeves and get moving. So just thanks again to everybody who's been participating with us. We know that there's a lot to get done, but it really is exciting, and I think there's a sense of real opportunity to take another big step together towards West-wide market integration. I will just briefly mention before concluding that we are also still working very hard on what has now been characterized as our transmission service and market scheduling priorities conversation. This is the place where we continue to try to address the wheel-through issue, which of course is still a very, very important topic to many of our key partners, particularly in the desert Southwest. I think that conversation is progressing well. We have identified, I think, as a longer-term solution, or sort of the ultimate goal, to establish a transmission reservation process for establishing the scheduling priorities on the ISO system and wheel-through rights for adjacent utilities. I think the question that the groups are grappling with is the balance between trying to have some level of stability around the rules going into next summer versus while entities are already engaging in forward hedging transactions, while also trying to make some real progress on some additional enhancements that can add additional value for next year. So I've really appreciated folks continuing to work constructively, very transparently, very frankly with us on the importance of that issue, and we're committed to making additional progress. So it's been just a very dynamic time, a really busy week. Just wonderful to have a chance to see a bunch of people here in San Diego this week, and looking forward to next steps. So with that will conclude my report, and back to you, Chair Decker.
Okay. Just before we move on, any questions for Elliot from the governing body? Okay. Give that a minute. So the third item is on our agenda. I don't know if Letha Tani was able to join us or not, so it's the body of state regulators. But I do want to just give a shout out to Letha, or Commissioner Tani, I should probably say, Commissioner Tani, for her just dedication to the governing body and the work that she's done with us and the report outs and the messages she's carried to us over the last, at least since I've been a governing body member. They had their elections, and I understand that the new chair for the board, the BOSSER, is now Thad LeVar, and I believe I know Haley Williamson is the vice chair, and I believe she's here to do the report. People are trying to get back as they can from, again, CREPC and the BOSSER meeting, and so Haley is available, and she will be giving us the report out from the BOSSER. Haley, are you on?
Oh, was I first?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair Decker. And I also had the privilege of being at the CREPC meetings in person. It really was exciting and dynamic and great to be there. Chair LeVar sends his best as well. He's still traveling home from those. So I will be doing the report today, and thank you all so much for having me. I'm Haley Williamson. I'm the chair of the Nevada Public Utilities Commission. I was just recently elected vice chair of the BOSSER. I have been serving as the BOSSER's representative on the nominating committee, where I got to work with Chair Decker. And it's really nice to be able to work with you in this capacity as well now. The last update to the governing body was September 8th by Commissioner Tani. So I'm really happy to be able to provide this month's update and carry this torch, these big shoes to fill. And I do want to take a minute, Chair Decker, I really appreciate you recognizing Letha, Commissioner Tawney, we could not have done what we have been doing at the Bosser without her leadership. And I'd also like to recognize Commissioner Raper as well, both of whom have just been doing incredibly heavy lifts. I want to take just a minute here to recognize some of their accomplishments. They successfully negotiated and implemented a pathway for consistent Bosser funding to provide independent technical expertise and staff resources. The expertise and resources enable the Bosser to support the organization in its efforts to effectively fulfill its obligations. They also built on and strengthened the Bosser's relationships with the leadership of the CAISO, this body, and the CAISO Board of Governors, and they played key roles in achieving a significant operational and cultural change in the EIM governance structure, the adoption of the joint authority model. So Chair LeVar and I are just we have huge shoes to fill. As I said, we're so thankful for the leadership that they provided and also excited to engage with all of you. As you may recall, this is a bit of an update on what we've been up to. The Bosser amended its charter in April to provide for liaisons from the consumer-owned utility sector and federal power marketing administrations. I'm pleased to announce that the COU sector had appointed 2 representatives to serve as liaisons to the Bosser, and both have joined the Bosser for at least 1 meeting. Leah Fisher, a senior policy advisor at Public Generating Pool, joined the Bosser at our October 8th meeting, and Tony Braun, who represents the California Municipal Utilities Association, joined us at our live meeting in San Diego this Monday. The liaisons will provide the perspective of their customers in the Bosser meetings and discussions, which will allow for a better understanding of where positions are shared and where they diverge. I'm also pleased to announce that the Bosser's 2022 business plan and budget was approved in October. This was the Bosser's first budget process, which was quite a success. We had a joint and open meeting with the state-regulated market participants, the SRMPs, followed by an open comment period. Weeb staff did an excellent job with the budget presentation and the budget material. That process concluded with the support of the SRMPs for the budget and a positive vote of approval by the Bosser. The Bosser's budget includes additional training and technical expertise so that the Bosser can effectively fulfill its obligations to provide advice on market design and policy to this body, the CAISO Board of Governors, and the FERC. A couple more updates. Resource sufficiency. Resource efficiency, as you all know, is a foundational principle of the EIM, and the Bosser continues to be engaged on the EIM Resource Efficiency Evaluation Initiative. We discussed the proposed changes to the capacity test, the core of the RSE, at our October Bosser meeting. Wari Lee, a market analyst hired by Weeb, gave a very informative presentation on the capacity test and the positions of stakeholder groups. At the Bosser's fall meeting this Monday, we took a look at another key component of the resource efficiency evaluation, the monitoring and evaluating the application of the test. This is obviously, as you all know, critical for providing transparency to support review of the RSE's accuracy and performance. Also, as you all know, the RSE initiative is moving forward rapidly. CAISO staff expects to have a final proposal for the 2 governing bodies to consider by December. And at the Bosser's November monthly meeting, we will be discussing potential comments on the RSE initiative. The EDAM forum was also a success. 3 members of the Bosser, Commissioner Tawney, Commissioner Rechtschaffen of California, and myself, participated on a panel during the CAISO Market Forum on October 13th. In addition, Commissioner Tawney moderated a CEO discussion on market expansion at this past Monday's fall Bosser meeting. CEO Mainzer, Maria Pope, answered some key questions about EDAM governance and the EDAM design principles and concepts on the document that was recently released. The Bosser will continue to evaluate these proposals resulting from the EDAM effort and provide advice when appropriate to the CAISO, this body, and the Board of Governors. Finally, the next regular meeting of the Bosser is currently scheduled for November 12th. However, we're probably going to have to reschedule this meeting. So look for an announcement sometime. We're shooting sometime in November, but announcement to be coming shortly with connection information posted on the EIM Bosser page. Thank you all for letting me rapid fire some updates at you and for letting me be here today. And me and Chair LeVar are very excited to be working with you, and hopefully I can answer any questions you might have.
So first off, I want to apologize for not saying Commissioner Williamson. The protocol is I'm not very good with that, as my colleagues all know.
Always Haley is always fine.
So I will ask if the governing body, do any members have any questions for Commissioner Williamson? Looks like Rob. Go ahead, Rob.
Anita, I'd like to start off saying that we lost our communications earlier. And so we had worked out a communication through a cell phone, but it got dropped. So what we're going to do from the conference room here is everyone has visibility, but we're going to use my laptop for communication. So we only have one device.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay. Commissioner Williamson, I just wanted to thank you for your update and comments. The meeting that you had here in San Diego was very topical and very timely. I thought the discussion was great. I really thought it provided some good insights for the governing body members that were able to participate. I thought that it will lead us into some better discussions than we otherwise would have had. And so just like to express my appreciation. Thank you.
And vice versa. Thank you for sharing that.
Any other questions?
This is John.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, just glad you're in that position, Commissioner. I look forward to working with you. And as you know, probably by now, if you need anything at all from this governing body, please ask. That's what we're here for. So I look forward to working with you and Commissioner LeBar.
Thank you so much. And same, thank you so much for that warm welcome.
Okay, and again, Commissioner Williamson, thank you so much for your service, not just this service, but the nominating committee and other things that you do that certainly support the work of the Western Energy Imbalance Market. So it's really been appreciated. And you guys really have done a lot in this last year, particularly just getting through the funding and getting the agreement of all of the commissions was just a yeoman's work for sure. So you guys just really have a lot going for you. And when you look at what's going to happen or what can happen or the potential for what can happen in terms of the West-wide market, I think you guys are really working all hard and collaboratively to make sure we get to a good place. So thank you for all that work.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. It was a huge lift by all the states, and it was really impressive to see. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will move on to the next agenda item, and we have Pam Sporberg to give a update on the Regional Issues Forum. Pam?
Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you, we just can't see you.
Oh.
Here, just let me just.
Okay, I'm going to switch computers with Rob.
There we go.
Climbing in. We're working it out. My notes are over here, so it'll be an interesting process here. Hopefully we'll be back to person soon, and this kind of uncomfortable scenario can disappear. So thank you, Chair Decker, for recognizing me. There has been so much work and activity that the Regional Issues Forum has done over the last few months, even though I think not a lot of it has been as visible. But I do want to start by also thanking our departing Chair Tawny for all of her work and leadership on the BOSSR, and welcome Chair Williamson to the new, or Vice Chair Williamson to the new role. This was definitely one of the best BOSSR-CREPC meetings I've attended. I think there's been there's a lot going on in the region, so certainly much to talk about, but a great work to put together an incredible agenda and really a very rich dialogue, which is, I think, why we're all still here in a conference room giving you these updates. So with that, the Regional Issues Forum has been extremely busy over the last few months implementing and adopting the changes that were the corresponding changes in the EIM operating guidelines that were adopted into the EIM governing body's charter. That started off with the selection of 7 new liaisons. Those liaisons are Josh Walter for the EIM entity sector, Meg McNall for the ISO participating transmission owner sector, Lauren Tenney-Dennison for the consumer-owned utility sector, as well as Doug Bacciagoni for the consumer-owned utility sector located within an EIM entity balancing authority area. We have Kathleen Colbert and Ian White from the independent power producers and marketers sector, and Alex Spain will be representing Bonneville in the Federal Power Marketing Administration additional liaison role. So, and electing those folks is a very big challenge. It was a big lift, and I really particularly want to acknowledge the work that Stacey Crowley and Keone Almeida did in facilitating all of these market notices, the sector list updates, and the WebExes that really was necessary to make this voting transition happen. I think there was a week in September where my entire calendar was populated with RIF election notices, and just the sheer amount of work that took and that lift was remarkable, a remarkable effort by ISO staff, especially a short-staffed ISO. So big thanks there. It went very smoothly, and with a huge thanks to the ISO for all of that work. I also want to welcome Emily Hughes, who is our new ISO liaison. I'm sure you all will be getting to know her as I did. She was here at the Bosser, and she brings a wealth of experience from the ISO. She's been with the ISO a number of years in the transmission planning department, and we're looking forward to leveraging her deep connections across the ISO as well as her technical expertise to help us staff and populate our new RIF agendas as we go forward. With this huge transition, I do want to make sure I thank our departing liaisons. Their work and dedication to the forum and their leadership and the number of ideas that we have shared over the last few years as a remarkable achievement. And I'm really looking forward to welcoming the new liaisons, and already we've started to have our first set of meetings, and the new ideas and enthusiasm that they bring to this group is a remarkable and notable difference. We've got a number of really great ideas that are starting to percolate, and we hope to bring some of the best of those ideas to our hopefully last virtual forum in early December. We'll be finalizing that agenda and hopefully sending out a date and market notice on that relatively soon. And then we do hope to go back to in-person with our first meeting in 2022. I hope the governing body will join us in that, but hopefully we can press forward with meeting more in person as we go forward and make that transition again. Finally, we've implemented the mechanics of adopting these new red lines, but the next set of work that we have to do is implementing to the spirit of the red lines. We have an expanded scope, additional responsibility, and new opportunities to talk about a wider variety of issues. And we've been reaching out, I think, to a number of the members of this body, as well as to Bosser and other stakeholders, our past liaisons, to really understand, as well as members of the Governance Review Committee, to understand the spirit and intent of those guidelines and new scope, and to start thinking about how we want to operationalize those in the RIF. Incrementalism is the main word for the West, and I think we will take an incremental approach to our expanded scope. But I encourage all of you to open up a dialogue with all of the liaisons, as well as anyone who's listening on the phone, to reach out to your liaisons and really just open this dialogue so that we can really think carefully and thoughtfully about what we do with this expanded scope and how we make stakeholder participation work in the ISO context. I think at the Bosser meeting, we heard about a lot of different models of stakeholder participation, and we have this opportunity to get one that works best for the West. We have a lot of different sectors with a diversity of voices here, and making sure all of those voices are heard and recognized in the stakeholder process and in the RIF process, I think is what is really necessary to make a uniquely Western process work. So I hope that we get a robust participation and a lot of dialogue as we work to implement that new process and new scope. So with that, that will conclude my update, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions from the governing body for Pam?
Rob, we can share screen if you want to come in.
Bill, did you have anything?
Anita?
Go ahead, Rob.
I'm just going to take the laptop back and I'm going to give it back to Pam. And it feels a little awkward doing this here with Pam sitting right next to me. But Pam, what I'd like to say is CEO Manger, covered some really critical things that are happening and really building. And it's clear that these things are going to happen in parallel. And so we're going to have that challenge of having attention on some really key initiatives. And I think your key word for me that you had in your remarks was, looking at how we operationalize some of this. And I think that's going to be a really critical element in these things because now we're getting past some of the issues on philosophy and getting into how do we make this work. And I want to thank you and the entire RIF for willing to move into this new realm and really dig into these details and provide that guidance back to the governing body.
Well, we will work to continue to provide that guidance. And I think you're right. We have a very complex road ahead of us. And while the RIF it's important that the RIF not run a parallel stakeholder initiative. The stakeholder initiative is really where the details get ironed out. But when we're dealing with issues that are this complex, there is so much additional room for dialogue and discussion. And I think that this ability to work on, have the RIF run in parallel with the stakeholder initiative and provide a lot of that supplemental support and an opportunity to bring different voices and different perspectives into that dialogue, I think will really strengthen the relationship that the RIF has and hopefully the relationship that RIF has with the governing body.
All right. Any other questions for Pam?
This is Elliot. I just wanted to reinforce a comment. I had a chance to seeing Pam at the CREPC meeting. Pam, I'd also like just to reiterate my offer. I think the first invitation I think I received after accepting the job as CEO was to the RIF, and I had a chance to speak with you, and I think Steve B was still there. I would relish an opportunity to see you all again and really hear your perspectives and just make sure that stakeholder perspective is really brought right into the heart of our process here in the months ahead. So consider a standing offer, and it'd be fabulous if it could happen in person, if not by Zoom. So thank you.
Well, Elliot, I really do appreciate that offer. I was holding it in my back pocket for when we returned in person to hopefully incentivize more participation.
There you go.
Hopefully, we'll look for that invite in early 2022.
Fabulous. Thank you.
And any other comments for Pam or questions? Pam, I just want to say, I think it is an exciting time for the RIF. Not only have we seen the BOSR, I think, really strengthen, we've seen, I think, the opportunity for the RIF to really strengthen as well. And, getting a group of new liaisons on board and hearing from different perspectives just within even the each sector, because you've got new people coming on. I think it's going to be a really exciting time, particularly as we go through some of these initiatives that the Cal ISO is bringing forward. So I think it's going to be robust. I think it's going to be well vetted, the proposals that come forward. I'm really looking forward to see how you guys interact with us and the Cal ISOs as we look at the elements of EDAM and even the transmission. Elliot, how'd you say it now? The transmission service scheduling?
Transmission service and market scheduling priorities. Starting to roll up, yeah.
Okay, that's better than ELF, so I like that a lot better. So good job, Pam. I'm taking it you're going to continue to chair the RIF, is that?
Anita, that is an excellent question. And the piece that in our little confusion here, did leave out of my remarks. We are in the process currently, if you look at the website, it's Pam's corporate chair, and we're missing our vice chair and our corporate secretary. So we're in the process of selecting new representatives for those roles. I will continue in the chair while we have this transition, bringing all of these new folks on board. I think it's important to have continuity and to ensure that we are able to maintain that incremental growth approach so that the RIF continues to provide the value and maintain these relationships. I do intend to transition out of this role soon. The guidelines for the chair role are a year, and I took on this role, I believe, in September of 2019. So I'm well over my tenure, and I appreciate the support and really the support of all the liaisons and all of you that have helped me maintain this role beyond the stated tenure, so we could really have that continuity through the GRC process. But it is time to pass the mantle, and so hopefully by our next meeting I will be able to introduce a vice chair and a secretary who will very soon step into the chair and vice chair roles, and I hope that you'll help them come on board in the same way that you helped me, so that we can maintain this open dialogue.
Very good. And again, I don't want to speak for each individual governing body member, but I would say in total, I think that we're all very encouraged and excited about the changes in the RIF charter, and we look forward to meeting some of the new folks if we don't know them already, and certainly continuing a dialogue with the issues that come forward. With that, we will go to our next agenda item, and this is in regard to the governing body market expert. As I think most folks that might be on the call realize, that the governing body was given the authorization to hire a market expert, and we recently did a survey to kind of better understand what did stakeholders expect out of the market expert. And part of that is as a governing body, we were not sitting here with a list of things we thought a market expert should be doing. So there was really an opportunity to kind of hear from stakeholders about what's important about a market expert in terms of priorities, qualifications, and interaction. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Member Gardner to go through a little bit back of what we heard. Jennifer?
Great. Thank you, Chair Decker. I'm going to do a quick sound check. Can you hear me okay?
Very good.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you again, and really excited to be here today speaking with stakeholders about the latest thinking that the governing body has in regards to this market expert. Let's go to the next slide, please. So as Chair Decker just mentioned, and as many of you are already well aware, the Board of Governors and the governing body jointly approved GRC's proposal to establish this market expert. This was part of the Part 1 recommendations. As many of you know, there were two sort of phases or two parts to the GRC's recommendation. So this part was approved back on May 6th. So we've sort of had this in mind for a while, but we wanted to make sure before we moved forward with the hiring process that we were able to obtain stakeholder feedback on what this role might look like on a day-to-day basis. And so as Chair Decker mentioned, we did initiate a survey for stakeholders, and we did end up receiving feedback from 11 stakeholders or stakeholder groups, which was really, really helpful to inform our thinking on this role. So let's go to the next slide, please. Our survey covered 3 broad areas. We wanted to hear from all of you on the scope of issues that you think this market expert should address, the key qualifications and criteria for actually hiring this expert, and then how this expert may or may not interact with stakeholders and the stakeholder process at CAISO. And so let's talk about that first issue, the scope of issues that this market expert should address. I don't think this will come as a huge surprise, but most stakeholders were generally in consensus that this market expert should provide opinions or advice on major policy initiatives that are a part of the governing body's decisional authority. Where stakeholders tended to differ was on what other topics the market expert might address. So for example, we heard from some stakeholders that it would be valuable for the market expert to provide periodic assessments of the EIM's performance, to analyze the EIM's impacts on regional decarbonization efforts, and to offer advice to the governing body on the ongoing market design efforts related to EDM, or the extended day-ahead market. So we heard a lot of different ideas there, which was, again, very helpful. Let's go to the next slide, please. The next big topical area that we sought input on from stakeholders was the qualifications and criteria for actually hiring this market expert. So again, we did see some general consensus around the idea that a market expert should have expertise organized markets, not surprising. What was interesting was the breadth of that expertise the stakeholders wanted us to look for. So not only expertise with the EIM and the CAISO market, but also other organized markets outside of the West. So this was, stakeholders were really wanting to see a breadth of expertise when it comes to markets. Stakeholders also want to see a deep understanding of the Western interconnection, not surprising as the Western interconnection is unique in a lot of ways. And of course, also, we saw quite a few recommendations for experience at FERC. There were also some stakeholders that sought more specialized expertise, but expertise that's related to these prior categories that I just mentioned. So, for example, stakeholders wanted to see an understanding of the LMP-based market that we see at CAISO and how that interacts with the OAT or bilateral framework that we see in the rest of the West. And there were quite a few stakeholders who wanted to see somebody who could adequately analyze market themes issues, as we're going to see market themes develop as markets continue developing in the West. Commenters also generally stress the need for this market expert to be able to provide an independent and unbiased viewpoint. And then a few stakeholders also offered pretty specific recommendations on how we should apply conflicts of interest requirements to this market expert. Let's go to the next slide, please. Finally, the last topic that we requested stakeholder input on was how this market expert may or may not interact with stakeholders and the stakeholder process. So again, commenters seem to agree that there probably should be some interaction with stakeholders in the stakeholder process, but to what degree was, there wasn't a lot of consensus there. We heard a lot of different views for what this interaction should actually look like on a day-to-day basis. And in addition to that, we heard from stakeholders that the market expert's opinions should generally be publicly available, but that there will probably be some instances where opinions cannot be made public. So, for example, where an opinion involves sensitive data and that data is unable to be aggregated to such a degree where it can be made public. Let's go to the next slide. So in terms of next steps, again, I want to reiterate the appreciation on behalf of the entire governing body for all of the stakeholders that participated in our survey. This goes without saying that this is a really busy time at the CAISO and across the West when it comes to market development. So I know everybody's very busy. So we appreciate you taking the time to give us your thoughts on what this market expert will look like. For those of you who are interested in reviewing the survey responses, they have been posted on the Western EIM website. They're on the Governance Review Committee's page, so make sure to go there if you want to look at those comments. And then again, in terms of next steps, what we are hoping to do is to continue thinking about the input we've received as we refine the scope and qualifications for the position so that we can actually initiate the hiring process sooner rather than later. And again, we will make sure to keep stakeholders apprised of our progress as we make that progress going forward. So thanks again for all of your input and happy to take questions should we have them. Thanks, Chair Decker.
You're welcome. So any comments or questions from the governing body members? So Jennifer, great job going through that. There was a lot of information. We'll be working on that later to digest some of that. Any other items to come before the governing body? So as you guys know, Rob?
Did you want to see if there's any public comments on this?
Sure. Is there any public comments on the marketing expert presentation? While we're waiting a minute, Rob, thank you for the reminder. Thank you.
I think I see Elliot's hand raised, but I don't know if that's intentional.
A relic from the last segment, so apologies. I'll put that down.
Operator, can you go ahead and queue up and see if we do have anybody on the line?
To the Q&A portion of today's call, you may enter the question queue by using the WebEx raise hand icon or by dialing #2 on your phone. Once you've been unmuted, please state your name and affiliation before stating your comment or question. At this time, there are no comments or questions in the queue.
Thank you, operator. So the next agenda item is informational reports. I do want to go back to at our last meeting, we did pass a motion for the Board of Governors to consider on a bylaws change. And Roger, do you have an update on that?
Thank you, Chair Decker. Yes, the very brief update. We have done a stakeholder proceeding on the recommended language, and that was there was only one comment made, which was submitted by Salt River Project. That was simply that they supported the amendment without any further discussion. We are planning to bring that. We will be bringing that proposed amendment to the Board of Governors in its meeting on November 3rd and 4th.
Thank you very much. And for those listening on the call, what the amendment was, if you were not at our last meeting, on advisory committees, it was things that are under the joint authority should also be jointly appointed if we need a committee or a task force to work on it versus just a Board of Governors appointment. So we're really pleased to see that move forward. So thank you, Roger. In our information reports, we have the EIM governing body calendar. The 2022 calendar has been updated significantly. So if you're looking to get our meetings on your calendar, please do take a new look at those. The quarterly budget report, we're in great shape there. And then some of the stakeholder initiatives. I'm going to ask Elliot if he has any closing comments since we have a couple of minutes.
I guess the only thing I would comment on is as we've had quite a succession of leaders moving from key roles and the ascendancy of the next generation. Certainly to Commissioner Tawney, she really was a fabulous, I think, transformational leader. It's wonderful to have Commissioner Williamson, Commissioner LeVar now stepping into those roles. Really looking forward to working with them. Pam, way to hang in there with the RIF. We really appreciated the bridges that you've built there as well. And it's a neat time for the West. And we've just really, these little glimpses of folks in person have been really invigorating. And I think we're just all excited to continue rolling up our sleeves and produce good results. So appreciate all the energy in there, and we're just excited for the next chapter. So thank you very much.
I want to reiterate a comment that Member Prescott made, and that's, as I think many of you know, the governing body is very proactive in terms of stakeholder outreach and looking for opportunities to make sure that we are listening, we are engaging. So please do keep that in mind. We're available to attend a number of forums. We are looking for the in-person. I had my first, I've gone to 2 in-person meetings, and it just really does make a difference to actually see someone and see the expressions and have a chance to just kind of like take a breath and talk with people in person. Any other closing comments by any of the governing body members? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Chair Decker.
Thank you.
Sure.
Concludes our conference. Thank you for using Event Services. You may now disconnect.